This week on Americans Abroad, we talk to Calvin Mazlumyan, who helps people move all over the world. Stephanie, he is somebody who thinks that you should be essentially collecting residencies and citizenships like Pokemon. How do you feel about all that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting option because it gives you flexibility. Uh, if one place isn't your vibe or something changes geopolitically or financially, you have, a plan B. And in fact, this company is Plan B Outbound Migration. I know that for us moving to Portugal, one of our goals is to eventually get that always desired EU passport. So, it's something that I've been thinking about. Now, will I go out and get passports for, half a dozen different countries? Probably not. But having something that gives me that extra flexibility, not only for travel, but also for where we want to settle, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I think is kind of interesting. For you, Jen, are you planning on getting your Mexican citizenship or are you thinking of staying in a residency status? What is your plan, you and Brett?
Well, I do think this whole business of gaining residencies and citizenships is shrewd. I don't
Mhm.
know if I personally have it in me to go. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? And I
Yeah.
do like the idea of spending time in a lot of different countries over the rest of my life. Once you once you're out, then
Yeah.
the whole world is open to you. And it's sort of like when you have to go run an errand. And let's say
Mhm.
that you want to buy a shirt and go to the post office and go to the store and I don't know, go to the gym. And it is so hard to get up off the couch. But once you get off the couch and go do the first errand, the rest are not that big of a deal. And now it's kind of
Right.
fun to be out and about. And then maybe you even start thinking, oh, you know what? As long as I'm out, I think I'm going to go get a blowout or pick up a new
Mhm.
nail polish or whatever. And you start coming
Yeah.
up with new ideas. And I think moving abroad can be kind of like that too, because now that I'm out, I'm like, ooh, I could spend time in this country and that country
Mhm.
and whatever. And maybe eventually we'll get to try all these different places. So,
Right.
okay. So that said, yes, we do intend to get Mexican citizenship. I love Mexico. I think it's a really special, amazing place. I just don't see any reason not to make it a greater part of our lives and make that commitment. I'm not going to swear that that won't change. The
Yeah.
world is a is a mercurial place of shifting sands, and anything could happen with us and expatsy in the world. And so I don't want to swear to it because we still have about 4 years to go before we'd be eligible. But yes, as it stands, that is our plan. What about you?
Yeah. And I definitely want to get citizenship at some point. And the reason why I say it at some point, because I know that there are people listening to this episode uh who are thinking, oh, well, it used to be 5 years and now it's going to be 10 years. And they're maybe thinking for themselves, do I want to pursue Portugal now that it's 10 years? And I also want to talk about the fact that, you know what, if we're just permanent residents for a little bit longer, if it takes a little bit longer, I'm okay with it. I don't need to vote in Portugal. That I mean, immediately, that's not a big impetus. Again, the flexibility, the passport, the ability to go, hey, we now want to settle in Germany because it's even colder and we want colder weather or whatever we want to do. But I think even having that permanent residency could be kind of cool. Again, citizenship, yes, would be amazing. I'm also reminding myself that I have to have a B1 proficiency in Portuguese in order to get that citizenship. So, I think secretly I'm kind of glad that I have to wait 5 more years before they'll even
Yeah.
allow me to take that test. We just started our Portuguese tutoring this week, and baby, we've got a long way to go. So, just knowing where we can settle, I think is great. Permanent residency will also allow us to travel freely in and out of Portugal. We're not beholden to that, have to be in country X number of months every 2 years. It changes a lot. But I don't know. I think there's just something special about having that second passport. On this week's episode of Americans Abroad, we are joined by Calvin Mazlumyan from Outbound Migration. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I would love to learn what got you into this business of helping people move abroad. Is there a personal connection for you? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, I do have a personal link to the whole thing. I'm Armenian by ethnicity. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and we immigrated to the United States at a very young age. And I do see the value of holding multiple nationalities, multiple residencies. Whenever the right time comes, it becomes a benefit all of a sudden. I'll give you a couple of examples real quick off the top of my head that I can think of. Just right now, my nephew was in Qatar end of January, thinking he was just going to have a time of his life because it's winter and nice and warm out there, etc. And then the Iran war took place, and he was stuck in Qatar, bombs flying over him and missiles and everything else. And he reached out to the U.S. Embassy saying, "How can I get out of here?" And the embassy staff said, "We don't have anything arranged for American citizens abroad. We're sorry, just keep waiting." Well, I told them, guess what? You also have Turkish citizenship. Call the Turkish embassy. Let's see what they say. And they were able to get him out by bus from Qatar to Riyadh. And then from there, he flew out back to the United States. So you never know which passport at what time in your life will really provide a benefit to you. It could be something little or major. You never know, but it's always good to have it in your pocket.
Yeah, that flexibility can be very important. You're a multiple passport holder, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I hold multiple citizenships. I hold residencies. I mean, during COVID, it was just something else. I'll give you another example. Like, I really wanted to celebrate my birthday in Mykonos, Greece in the year 2020. And because of COVID, Greece shut down its borders and we just could not fly. Everything got canceled. I barely got my money back. It was annoying. And then I said, okay, next year for sure, I'm doing it. And guess what? In 2021, Greece still didn't open up its borders. So as a US citizen, we were just not able to enter the European Union, you know? So that's when I said, okay, I need to have a residency from somewhere within the European Union. That way, next time a COVID, pandemic shuts down the borders, I will not be restricted. I will be able to get in and out of Europe as I please.
And so talk to us about how you decided to start your business, Outbound Migration.
Well, I am an immigration attorney based in California. So my main thing was supposed to be inbound migration to the United States. But as time went by, this COVID piece especially raised a lot of concerns among Americans. And they kept on asking, like, Calvin, how can we move abroad? How can we have some type of a plan B abroad, et cetera? And I realized that rather than doing this as a volunteer, I might as well just open up a separate consultancy. And our consultancy firm is called Plan B Outbound Migration Consultancy. And there we help Americans kind of consider what Plan B options they have available. Can they immediately move? Can they move later on down the road? Do they just want to have a residence card for emergencies, like I mentioned, if they just want to travel to Europe, but they cannot enter, for example? So all of those features kind of added up nicely. And then, of course, the political climate changing, et cetera, also raised the amount of inquiries we have. So believe it or not, I'm doing more than 50% outbound than inbound right now. So United States is not as popular as it used to be as far as immigration, but Americans definitely want to move abroad.
Calvin, I respect the fact that your business was inspired by wanting to have a birthday party. I can completely respect that. So what are all the countries that you help Americans move to?
Great question. I mean, it all depends on needs, right? So with Americans, for example, becoming a Dubai resident does not really help them out much because when you're a US citizen, your taxation is based on citizenship. So even if Dubai charges you 0% tax, you still pay Uncle Sam your dues. So therefore, it's not as attractive for Americans. What attracts Americans the most is the lifestyle. So European Union is always on top of the list for Americans, preferably Portugal, Spain, Malta, Italy, Greece, Cyprus. All of these Mediterranean climate countries are very attractive to Americans because of its lifestyle. And like if you want to retire sooner or later, you want to have that European destination on mind. Next is usually ancestry-based immigration. We have lots of British ancestry, Irish ancestry, German ancestry clients who just say, you know what, can we just obtain citizenship through our ancestry? And yeah, by all means. And once you become a European Union citizen, you basically have access to all the 27, 28 European Union nations where you can live, work, do whatever you want as long as you want. So that's a huge plus. And then we have another category of Americans who say we cannot move to Europe because of the time zone changes, because we still have to do some digital work within the United States. So for them, time zone matters, in which case we recommend something in Central or South America. Most popular ones are usually Panama, Costa Rica, Uruguay. These are like the stable nations within our hemisphere that, life is good to live in. And Mexico too, of course, because of its proximity.
Mhm. I want to focus on Cyprus for just a moment. And in fact, we are hosting a webinar with Calvin on July 11th, where we'll do a deep dive in what Cyprus has to offer, what pathways are there. You can find more about that at expatsy.com/events. But let's touch on Cyprus just a little bit here on this week's podcast. So some people may have remembered in the past this idea of buying citizenship in Cyprus. But I understand that some of the programs have changed. So talk to us about what has changed in terms of citizenship or residency by investment, and what does that program look like today?
Definitely. I mean, let's not even say Cyprus specific. Malta also had the citizenship by investment when you pay and then
Mhm.
get citizenship. The European Court of Justice has been very strict about this matter. They absolutely, absolutely do not want any European Union country selling out citizenships for money. It's no longer available. The court ruled a few years ago and shut down anything and everything related to direct citizenship by an EU nation. So if you see or read anywhere that says a country in the European Union is just giving away passports, it's a lie, it's a scam. Beware, do not follow. So the only way right now to have a pathway to citizenship within a European Union country is through a residency program. Various countries have their own setups. Cyprus has its own right now. The cool thing with Cyprus compared to most of the other European Union countries is that it can give you direct permanent residency so long as you purchase any property of real 300,000 euros or above. So it's not a huge amount of an investment. You can literally buy a summer home there and then get that permanent residency. The difference between a permanent residency and a temporary residency in another EU nation is the renewal process. When it's a permanent residency, you don't have to renew it anymore. You just get the card and you're all set. Card expires, they'll issue you a new one and so on. With a temporary residency, every 1 to 2 years, you have some restrictions, regulations, rules that you have to follow to be able to renew that card. So it's not as exciting. So that's what makes Cyprus unique compared to the other European Union nations. The other part of Cyprus is that it is part of the EU, but it is not part of the Schengen zone. And you may or may not be familiar with the Schengen zone rules, but it does require you to stay 90 days in Schengen, and then you got to get out of Schengen for another 90 days. So I have a lot of clients who literally spend 90 days in a Schengen zone country, let's say like Italy or France or Portugal, and then they go to Cyprus for another 3 months and hang out there to fill out the other 90 days out of the Schengen zone to get back into the Schengen zone later. So you can literally play this game within the European Union without really getting out anywhere. You don't have to like return to the United States to satisfy that requirement. You can literally go to Cyprus, you can go to Ireland, you can go to Turkey, some other country around Europe, and then get back to the Schengen zone that way too.
What is it like in Cyprus? What is life like?
That's a good question because a lot of people may or may not know much about Cyprus. Cyprus is like the third largest island in the Mediterranean. It's only a little bit smaller than Sicily and Sardinia islands. So it's pretty big. I would say it's about the same size of Puerto Rico, if we have a comparable size.
Mhm.
It's 10 times or maybe even 20 times bigger than Malta. So there's a lot more to do in Cyprus than in many of the other islands around the Mediterranean. 2/3 of the island is Greek. 1/3 of the island is more Turkish. There's a separation between the sections. The Greek part is the European Union. It's the Republic of Cyprus. And then the Turkish part is its own separate entity that was only recognized by Turkey, but that's just the way it is. But it's a very peaceful island overall. There's nothing happening for the last 50 years. That separation has been set, and that's just the way life goes on there. On the European Union side, the euro is the currency that they use. The climate is Mediterranean climate. However, there are some mountain ranges within Cyprus Island. So you can actually even go skiing in the winter for about a few weeks. It's doable. But overall, it is a Mediterranean climate, which means the temperatures would be in the 80s and 90s, 300 plus days of sunshine, easily accessible. You can fly to Cyprus from anywhere in the European Union. And then to the northern side, you can fly from Istanbul nonstop. So, the island is accessible whichever way you look at it. The prices are pretty reasonable. Again, you can buy something in the beachfront for 300,000 euros or so. And life is simple. I mean, that's the European lifestyle again, the same thing. So
Mhm.
if you like the Greek culture, you like the Turkish culture, this island offers you a little bit of both. So it's kind of cool in that sense.
I didn't know it was so big. I did know that it's shaped like the US.
Mixture wise,
No, it looks like it. The
oh,
island itself,
physically, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I can always find it on the map. Is
easier to find.
English
That's true.
Yeah, is English widely spoken there, or is it mostly Greek or Turkish?
No, absolutely. Cyprus was a British territory between 1878, I think, all the way until after World War II. So there is a lot of British influence in there. I mean, I can easily say over 70% of the population speaks fluent English, in addition to, of course, Greek or Turkish. But there's
Mhm.
also a big British influence. They have British bases out there in Cyprus, as well as British schools, international schools. So in that sense, English is never an issue. Like linguistically, if you don't speak any Greek or any Turkish, you'll be just fine in the island.
And do you see a lot of Americans moving there? And is it to be remote workers or retirees or something else?
Americans are just starting to discover the island, honestly. I mean, most Americans were all into Greece and the Greek islands. And I keep telling them, like, guess what? Here's a bigger Greek island. There's a lot more to do in Cyprus than any of the smaller Greek islands out there. So, yes, I mean, technology wise, they're definitely up there. So, any digital nomad could easily work from Cyprus, no problem at all. And again, because the island itself is a European Union member, access to in and out of the country is not that difficult. Life is again based on euros, very stable. And for an American individual, again, for that Mediterranean climate, seekers, it's a good alternative to consider.
So I want to ask a couple questions about the process. Is the residency process done from the U.S.? Just talk to us a little bit about, once somebody maybe finds that property to buy for 300,000 or more, what
Mhm.
does that process look like?
I mean, we work hand in hand with the Cypriot attorneys that take care of all the process from A to Z. And that's what I'm proud of saying, like we always say, hey, we will, hold hands and do the whole thing with you.
Mhm.
But it's not just us, obviously. We work hand in hand with the lawyers of that country that you want to move to. So in this case, with the Cypriot attorneys, we have great relationships. The pathway to permanent residency goes through that purchasing of that 300,000 euro property or more, and you get to choose. There's different developments, different sections of the island that you can consider, etc. That process is pretty fast, actually. Within 1 year, you become a resident of the country. However, alternatively, there are some people who say, you know what, I don't want to purchase anything. What other options are out there? They
Mhm.
do have something for retirees and digital nomads, in which case you can lease a property instead of purchasing it. That process is a little bit longer, but the good news is when you submit your application into the system, no matter how long the process takes, you're allowed to stay in Cyprus in the meanwhile. So you are legal, you remain legal during that
Mm.
process. So even though it could take about a year, sometimes 2 years for the whole thing to be processed, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be considered out of status while living in Cyprus.
For both of these pathways, is there a minimum amount of time that you have to stay in country? So, your permanent residency, let's say to the real estate investment, is there a minimum time that you have to be in country? And then the same for the retiree or digital nomad path.
Right.
What does that obligation look like?
Good question. So the permanent residency does allow you to stay outside. So long as you continue to own your property, you remain as permanent
Okay.
resident of the country. So it doesn't matter how long you live in Cyprus. They do want you to, I believe, visit once every 2 years for a few days, but that's pretty much
Mhm.
it. With the retiree and the digital nomad visas, there is a stay requirement. You're not supposed to be out of the country for more than 3 months. So up to 90 days, you can be out of Cyprus, but otherwise, you need to, literally live on the island. But they have some taxation benefits. I mean, I can look into the tax rates. Like pension income is only at 5% tax, royalties are at 3%. Let's see, employment income depends. It's anywhere from 0 to 30 something, and the corporate tax is 15%. So they have some
Wow.
exciting tax benefits compared to the
Mhm.
other EU nations that you would be living in. So it's not a bad deal to live in Cyprus.
And is the tax resident threshold similar to other EU nations where it's 183 days, and once you pass that, you become a tax resident? Is that how Cyprus treats it?
That's pretty typical globally, actually. Like 183 days is always a threshold, and some countries actually say, "I don't care about the days, but I care about your ties to the country." So if you have your spouse and children going to school in the country, etc., even if you yourself don't, you like some people adjust themselves to 180 days or 170 days to make sure they don't get into that thing. But some countries treat it differently. Shakira had that problem with Spain, for example, where she thought that 183 days mattered, but no, they said, oh, it's the ties, it's not the ties. Ultimately, she won her case on the taxation thing, but it's a challenge. So you don't want to really risk it, I think. So if you don't want to be a tax resident of a specific country, it just makes sure that you don't build those strong ties to the country.
Do you know if the country has a totalization agreement with the United States? Speaking of taxes.
Speaking of taxes, I don't know. I can find out though. Probably by the time we have our webinar next week, I'll get the answer for you on that one.
Amazing. So, what are you going to talk about in the webinar?
Well, I'm thinking of going over the three different pathways: the digital nomad, the retiree, and the property purchase pathways for Cyprus residency, leading to pathway to citizenship as far as what the timelines will be, linguistic requirements, etc. And then again, the convenience of Cyprus as far as being a European Union nation, not being part of the Schengen zone, proximity to the different countries around. Like right now, it's an Israeli favorite, actually, if you think about it, because of the war. All the Israelis were escaping Israel and heading towards Cyprus. It's right across.
Mm-hmm. What is the timeline to gain citizenship in Cyprus?
It depends on the type of residency you have. Normally, it's 5 years or 7 years, depending on the type of residency. And depending on the type of residency card you have to either know a B1 level Greek or A2 level Greek. So all of those details I will provide during the webinar.
Got it. And explain what the benefits are of having EU citizenship.
Well, again, when you have an EU passport from whatever EU nation among the 27 or 28 countries out there, you have access to the entire continent. Like you can literally, let's assume you became a Cypriot citizen. The very next day, you can move to France and live there forever and ever. And you can take advantage of their health benefits, educational options, everything. You can work, you can do whatever you want. Same thing for any other country. You can just get to choose. You pick and choose. You go, okay, now I want to try Germany. I want to try Ireland. I want to try Portugal. You can just move, live, work, do whatever you want, and it's multi-generational, right? I mean, when your children are born, they will be born that European Union citizen. If it's Cyprus, it's a Cypriot citizen, and these rights are not taken away from you, and that's super cool. Like, to give you an easy example, if an American person moves to Italy, they have to get a temporary residency card. They have to, apply for permanent residency, become a resident, then apply for citizenship, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're a Cypriot citizen moving to Italy, the only thing you do is go to the nearest municipality and say, "Hello, I'm a European Union citizen. Here's my Cyprus, passport. Just register," and that's it. It's literally like moving from California to Nevada type of a thing. It's beyond simple.
Amazing. Calvin, you have such a diverse background when it comes to helping people move internationally, immigration, investment, real estate. Tell me, what is one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make as they navigate their move abroad?
Oh, tax considerations. I have to be honest with you, because a lot of time people don't realize what type of income has a specific tax consequence. This one, I'll give you the Portuguese example. For example, Portugal had this non-habitual residence taxation set up for many, many years. They don't have it anymore. They don't have that version anymore. But that version basically made you tax exempt from all active income. But I had a couple of clients who were retired and used that formula and moved to Portugal. And guess what? Passive income is not included in there. So now they are paying some taxes on their social security, on their rental income, etc. And they were surprised, like, oh, we didn't know. Well, guess what? I am not a tax advisor. I'm not a tax attorney. I'm an immigration attorney. I connected you, these clients I had connected to, CPAs in Portugal. And all they had to do was ask, what type of tax consequences am I going to have? So anytime and every time a client wants to move abroad, the tax consequences will matter. Find out if the US has a tax treaty with that specific country. What are you going to be paying? I mean, whenever there's a dual taxation agreement, you will not pay double tax. That's a given. But there will be a cumulative tax, and it could be higher than what you would be paying otherwise. So you have to put it on a balance. Like, is it worth my move, this additional tax that I'm going to be paying, or is it not worth it?
Perfect. Well, Calvin, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are listening to this on or before July 11th, 2026, You can join us live for our webinar to learn more about moving to Cyprus at expatsy.com/events. If you missed the live show, don't worry. You can watch the replay at expatsy.com/resources. Calvin, again, thank you so much for joining us on Americans Abroad.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Have a great one.
And do you know what time it is?
I was born knowing what time it is. And let me tell you, I have been really thinking about specifically people like you and me, American women.
Mhm.
And because of that, I wrote a little song for the Q&A. Are
Okay.
you ready?
I'm so ready.
American woman, let's get away. American woman, listen what I say. What do you think?
I love it. I love all the A's at the end. I think that
Thank
adds
you.
a certain je ne sais quoi.
I think I could add a couple more, but
You never have enough A's. AIDS for days. So we had somebody write in and they ask, what is one country that's getting a lot of attention right now that you think people should take a second look at, and one that's maybe a little overhyped? So underrated, overrated. What do you think, Jen?
a lot of times you read all of these listicles and articles, and they do treat countries like they are brands, you
Right.
know, and this country is trending and this country is not trending. And it's
Mhm.
like, can you imagine the thousands of years of human history and wars and things, and if they could step forward in time and see that they are a trending hashtag,
I know.
or that,
It's the moment. Yeah. It's
or
the moment.
this summer's hottest visa is the
Mhm.
Portugal D7 or whatever else. But the truth is, it is kind of like that. Whatever it is about human beings, the biggest indicator of whether or not humans are going to want to move somewhere is if humans have moved there. And by
Mm.
humans, in this case, I mean Americans. So if
Right.
Americans are hyping up a place, then everybody wants to move there. And at some point, it will hit a critical mass and it will decline. Now, the one thing that I will say is that regardless of anything you read, no country has hit that tipping point or is anywhere close to it.
Yeah.
I just, there really isn't. We'll talk about overhyped, because, and again, it's so personal, but
Yeah.
there is no Americans have invaded blank country that is actually true. I think at this point, even in Portugal, which is,
Mhm.
what obviously what we're going to talk about in terms of being super popular. I think there are 22,000 Americans in the whole freaking country, which is, I mean, think about that. That's not enough
A
to
drop in a
fill
bucket.
a high school stadium in Texas. Like, it's just not a huge number of people. So, in terms of countries that have been very popular, without a doubt, Portugal is high on the list. There's a lot of talk about Mexico. The truth is, um, 80% of 80% of Americans who move to Mexico have Mexican heritage. So it is people who are typically dual citizens, cross border, and so on.
Right.
There are some American enclaves in Mexico. There's one in Ajijic, and there's one in San Miguel de Allende. I would say that's probably true in Costa Rica. But in a country as big as Portugal, I just don't even think, maybe in Cascais, you could say
Right.
there's,
Or down in the Algarve, but that may be more British citizens. But I just looked up
yeah,
some
Brits and
numbers.
Dutch.
Yeah, that I looked up. If we combine both US and UK citizens, it counts for 0.6 of all residents nationwide in Portugal. So us in
Yeah.
England would have to reform to still be less than 1%.
Well, Americans in particular don't even make up 1% of immigrants in Portugal.
Right.
Not just 1% of Portuguese, but not even 1% of immigrants, because
Right.
there are over 1 million immigrants in Portugal,
Mhm.
most of whom are Brazilian. So anyway, I don't know that there isn't any place where it's too late. I've
Right.
had friends say that before, oh, we want to move to Portugal, but we think it's going to be too late. And it's just
Mhm.
so funny because
Too late for
what?
what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
too late for what? It's not like it's over, like it's so over. And I think it's
Yeah, they're at
like it's
capacity and the fire marshal's at the door. The bouncer is not letting anybody else through the velvet ropes.
exactly, or it's no longer cool or something. And
Right.
it's like that's just not how. And I know people get those impressions even about American cities and things like
Yeah.
that. You're from San Antonio, so I'm sure you've
Mhm.
heard that about Austin your whole life,
Yep.
and you lived in
Absolutely.
Austin and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh, so I don't know. I think that's funny. The point is that you find a place that suits you and makes you happy. Now, that
Right.
said, since we launched Expatsy, which has been 4.5 years now,
Wow.
crazy. I won't say since we launched it, but since we launched it and then learned a little bit. So maybe for about
Yeah.
the past 3 years, we have said that there are 4 underrated countries. And those are Albania, Estonia, Slovenia, and Uruguay. And
Mm.
I will say that as of today, Albania and Uruguay are not nearly as underrated. People are actually taking those 2 countries seriously and starting to move there. And they're very, very different. Uruguay in South America, if you don't know, which is nestled between Brazil and Argentina, is incredibly posh and nice. It is beautiful. It is peaceful. It is a stable democracy, which, the US is not. And
Right.
it's very progressive. And it is known for wine and beef and like it's just a really nice place.
Yeah.
Albania. Oh, another big benefit of Uruguay is you can apply for residency after you get there. And you can get citizenship in as short as 3 years if you are married, but 5 years if you're
Amazing.
not married. Isn't that funny?
Gives you
I
2
th-
extra
just
years to find a partner.
well, and it's not even a Uruguay partner. It's just period. They just want
Just yeah.
married couples. It's so funny. Anyway, um, and then Albania is rough around the edges. Although they've been giving it what to and what for to Ivanka and
Right.
Jared, which has been fun to
Mhm.
watch. But it is, underdeveloped for sure. It is low cost, although, there are certainly parts that are rising in cost on the coast. But it is Mediterranean, it's in the Balkans, easy access to places like Greece and Italy and Slovenia and things like that. And it is not in the Schengen zone. And Americans can go there for a year, no questions asked, and only Americans. So it's a
Mhm.
great place to find a place to go, live on $1,000 a month, and figure out
Right.
your next steps. So those 2, I think, are really becoming more and more popular. Slovenia and Estonia are still very much under the radar.
Amazing. Well, if you have a question you would like for us to answer here on the podcast, you can email your questions to podcast@expatsy.com. Americans Abroad is an Expatsy production. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. Are you thinking about moving abroad? Start with our quiz at expatsy.com. That's EXPATSI.com.